Well, welcome to a Loaded Mag, a Friday special. We didn't really plan on doing one, and those who have been watching the last week or so will know I haven't been around due to obviously my dad passed away this day last week. If there is anybody out there that's going to say, God, he's only back after a week. In fairness, I've had a lot of love and support from a huge amount of you on Twitter, on the shows, through Steve Wraith, Steve Hasty, the Amigos, Pete, Chris, Nate, everybody that sent me messages. Thank you very much. I do really appreciate it, as does the family. But yeah, life goes on. So here we are, Friday night, 8 p.m, Loaded Mag special with my guests, obviously Nate and Chris, who are some of our regulars, and obviously Pete, one of my co-hosts from Wednesday nights, here to chat. So we don't really have any kind of schedule, but what we are going to talk about, because obviously today we were waiting to see, was there any noise on the whole CAT piece? Were the Premier League going to try and make a move? Were they going to try and be a little bit of shenanigans? Were they going to try and delay? Was Richard Masters going to try the old Duke of York again for a second time around? But there doesn't seem to have been too much coming out of it. We don't really know whether we're going to get any further forward. Obviously, Chris is probably a little bit more adverse around the whole legality side of it, which he'll give us an update on. But I suppose, lads, not too much noise tonight. We didn't really hear a lot. Looks like from all chat that the Premier League are either A, trying to push it along the road again a little bit, trying to get the CAT case thrown out, that they don't want it to run parallel with the arbitration. And also a slight change in the wind, Chris, that, weeks back where we seem to have this bit of bull and bluster that they were happy for it to run out, they now want to do it in private. So, have they got something to hide, mate? Or what's your views on what's happened over the last kind of this week with regards to the takeover and stuff?
Yeah, I would say it's definitely gone quiet, and that's not a bad thing. I think that obviously a lot of this whole saga has played out in public, sort of in real time, and then blown up social media. So I do believe through the proper legal channels that there is sort of an effort to sort of keep things quiet, keep things under wrap, let the professionals do their job. I mean, honestly, if you look at NUSC Twitter, it's still pretty much a mess in terms of, people always talking about like brown envelopes and all kind of stuff, and I just kind of get tired of that stuff. I mean, it sort of undermines the professional nature of it's in the hands of professionals. It's in the hands of the CAT, and they're going to do a job. They're going to consider the appeal, the arbitration. I mean, the end of competition case for its merits or not, and they will most likely bring the case forward. It's it's not going to be a quick resolution, and sort of all this sort of social media sleuthing about what does this date mean, what does that date mean. It's just a case that's sort of ripe for misinformation, or people will pull a thread and then take that thread out to way beyond sort of its meaning. So I think we just all need to have cooler heads need to prevail. Let the kind of heat simmer down, and let the cases take their course. And I don't think that there's any kind of reason for alarm or sort of suspicion, or what's the speculation or questioning what the Premier League is up to. I think that this will be handled responsibly, and it's in it's in a whole another venue than just a matter between the Premier League and Mike Ashley trying to sell the club and the consortium trying to buy the club. So I think we just kind of need to cool it down a little bit, lower the temperature, and there's going to be football on during the Euros, and sort of it's kind of a good opportunity to kind of not forget about everything, but sort of take our minds off of sort of the any kind of hourly updates, daily updates. It's just kind of let things take their course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nath, obviously a lot going on this week. Midweek, certainly, I kind of spent a little bit of time off Twitter earlier in the week, barring kind of DMs and message I was getting. But kind of by midweek, we had the plane spotters and the yacht spotters back on again. Ashley headed across to Nice. Then they were on the Rubens boat down to Cannes. Apparently, I kind of jokingly put on Twitter that they were heading off to somewhere nice, and the Rubens have been, MBS have been staying in Mike's house, and the two of them had a party and puked in the fireplace. And like the amount of tweets I got back, people going, "Really? Do you know anything?" And I was kind of like, "No, that's the point. I know nothing." This is the whole mess of Twitter, as Chris puts it. But where do you think? Do you think, certainly from chat over the last kind of 24 hours, coming off the back of obviously Premier League had to respond kind of by 5 p.m. today. Obviously, people were tweeting saying, they will respond. They've told the judges they'll put in details. I mean, in fairness, it's a CAT. They're going to put in details. So they are going to respond at some point. But do you think there's been a slight change in the wind, and that there was a bit of bluff certainly earlier on in the year that they were happy for it to play out in public, and now all of a sudden word seems to be coming that they want this thrown out, and if not, they want it played out in private. Do you think that sends any kind of messages, or do you think again it's the fan base just kind of hopping on whatever is available to us because we're that desperate to get either a yes or a no somewhere along the line?
Yeah, I think with the issues around it becoming public, obviously we know they've tried to delay matters. There was a talk of, obviously we've delayed it by wanting to change the panel, but I think that was to remove that judge. But I think that was a very shrewd move by the Newcastle side of things. What I would say is that I think people were expecting 5 o'clock today and there to be some sort of statement, but the order was drawn that documents were to be submitted by 5 p.m. today. There's not going to be any sort of statement at all, if at all. So I think people need to relax a little bit on that front. I think interestingly though, I was looking through the previous orders made on the CAT website earlier today. So the order from the 13th of May, I've just jotted this down here. The order from the 13th of May, this is when the Premier League sought an extension to the deadline to submit their evidence, and so they were granted an extension. I think it's very difficult for judges to not grant an extension in most cases that I've been involved with in previous lines of work. I think it's very rare for judges not to grant an extension unless there's absolutely no reason to. If a party says they need more time to prepare the case, then usually it's given, dependent on as long as they've not dragged their heels with it, let's say. But interestingly enough, if you read the order that was drawn up, that was drafted up after that, they wanted a longer extension initially, and the judge actually granted an extension that was, I think it was half the time that they actually granted. The Premier League felt that they would be, I think the words that were used, they'd suffer clear and obvious prejudice if they weren't granted the full extension. But this judge said that he was not persuaded that they would indeed suffer clear and obvious prejudice by not being granted the full time. So I think from what that tells me is that this judge has quite got a reasonable handle on things, in terms of no reason that he wouldn't have, but in terms of that when we're looking at delay, when we're looking at things like unnecessary delay and dragging the heels and that kind of thing, I think this guy's got quite a good, he's not rolling over for them and letting them do whatever they want to do. Obviously, he's carrying things out to the letter of the law, but I think with that, he's got quite a good handle on the Premier League, and I think it will be orchestrated in a fit and proper manner, let's say. But yeah, I think in terms of this week, there's a lot of bluster and hype on Twitter, wasn't there, in terms of people saying that there's meetings and that kind of thing. I know I saw you, Chris, earlier on posting in Steve Rafe's show earlier on that rich people go on holiday to Nice, and that's just the normal thing. But I think, and I think you're right, but I think it's very unusual that they're all there at the same time flying flying back within hours of each other as well. The both planes left within sort of 4 hours of each other. And you can't help but be sort of taken on by that. It looks strange, doesn't it, in terms of the exact timings that they're all there. But it could just be nothing. But I think people were saying, oh well, why would they not meet over Zoom? And you had people saying, oh well, if they're going to sign off the papers and have it all done and dusted, then they have to meet in person, and one thing and another. So me and Chris H were talking yesterday actually, and I was saying, when we were talking about that meeting when they all met in the south of France this week, I was saying, oh yeah, I reckon they've met there and they've gone and done it and they've signed it, and we might be further along than we think. But then with the sort of lack of movement and the sort of legal jostling for position that's gone on today, I don't think that's probably the case now, unfortunately. But yeah, I think the key to this is the publicity of it. Because I think once it becomes public, the Premier League will want to avoid that at all costs. Because if you look back in the last sort of 12 months that the Premier League have had, they had the sort of breakaway league that was talked about right at the start of the season, in whatever guise that was going to be. You've had all this drama being dragged through the mud for the last sort of the intermittent time in between that, and then right at the end of all this, you've got all the European Super League stuff. So from a PR perspective, the Premier League have had a disastrous year, and they'll want to keep this out of court if possible, out of the public eye, should I say.
Yeah. Pete, obviously we had the plane spotters and, as we said, everything else. What you guys were on LFW, midweek, chatted a bit of football and stuff. I think Chris makes a really good point. The Euros will come up. I think for genuine football fans, it's a very good timing of distraction that, we can focus around England, and, those that do or support other teams and stuff, can do, can just enjoy football for what it is. But do you think, Ashley and the rest of them being in Nice, to take Nate's point, is there something around that? I mean, if you're running any kind of business and stuff, surely you kind of get together and you do stuff anyway. So whether they're planning for a post, positive result or a negative result, do you think, is that just the norm, or do you think, was there anything in the fact that they were all there together this week in the south of France?
First and foremost, I'm a little bit gutted because on Wednesday and pretty much all this week, me and Chris H have had our party hats ready. We've had the champagne on ice.
I have seen the dances and the text, so yeah, I can confirm that.
We've been ready to party today, but all joking aside, did we expect anything of significance coming out today? No, not really. As it's already been said, today was the deadline, really, and they've got to go through all that information before anything of any note comes out. Do I think the reports in Nice were of any significance? Yes, I do. Do I think it was them signing documents to finalise any deal? No, I never really had that thought. Like concrete. If anything, what I think they were there for is to talk about the next stage of the plan, because let's not sort of get it twisted now. With regards to the PIF and the Rubens and PCP, so Staveley, they are all working together on this plan. Now, this plan has been in place since back in November. And although it's not gone to the month or the day or the week, their plan is unraveling. And I think, if anything, their meeting was to discuss what happens next, what they do next in terms of their strategic plan to ensure that this takeover goes the way they want. Now, whether that was talking about the upcoming arbitration, whether that was talking about the cat case and the deadline today and what maybe they were expecting for it to come out, who knows? But I think they were discussing the next plan in this strategic play, because it is a play, because this is the only way that this takeover would have gone through, and they had to be this strategic in order for it to happen, because there was no other way in which the Premier League would allow this deal to go through. So that's the way in which I think the stuff in Nice was of the significance. But both Chris and Nathan talked about, from a court point of view with the extended deadline, because Nathan was right. I think it was something like the 20-something of June that they wanted but weren't given. In most cases, an extension is given if you've got reasonable reason for an extension. But you have to think, over the last year and a half, with how the Premier League have conducted themselves, other organisations now must be questioning, the Premier League. Normally, with an organisation as big and as prominent as the Premier League and as significant of what it is, there'd be a level of trust there. But not just with this takeover, with a lot of other things, with the ESL and what the comeback has been with regards to that and the sanctions, which have been shocking, right? Other organisations now in courts and judges and all the rest of it must be thinking, hold on, maybe we do need to look into this. And I think that plays into our favour. So I do think, they will go through with this case. And I think they'll see it through for its entirety. Because at the moment, English football's in the mud in terms of how it's being governed, and I think there's a sort of revolving door at the moment in terms of a moment in which they can make things better in this country, and I think they're going to want to see this through in its entirety to see actually, are there any sort of hidden agendas there? Are there any backhanders? Are there any bits of information and dirty deals that we don't know about? And they're going to want to find that all out. So I do think it will be seen through. Will that help our takeover? Will it help us with arbitration and all the rest of it? Yes, I think it will. But I think, based on what my beliefs are with regards to the arbitration and what's happening, I think there's enough information there. And I'm sure there's even more that we don't even know about, not even been discussed in the public forum that will win this case. And it's just a case for me of when that is. I've not seen all of the Fab Four tonight. I've only seen part of it because I was out. But I know at the bit that I stopped watching that Keith was talking about potential dates that he thought that it might end and it might come to a conclusion. Now, you guys may know a little bit more about what he said, but I'm going to watch that later. And I think it's a case of that now more than anything. So that's just my little snippet on where I think we're at.
Okay. I think in terms of that, sorry.
Go on. Yeah, go on.
In terms of that, I think it's this cat case could put the Premier League on very, very shaky ground. If you look at what's gone on recently, if there's any sort of proof there that's established that the Premier League are operating in a cartel-like manner, let's say, I know that's the word that Keith likes to use. If there's any evidence of that, and that can be proven in a sort of court of law such as this, then it paves the way for so much headache for the Premier League. If you look at how they behaved around the punishment of the Elite Six, for example, that opens the way for other teams to get involved and have their say and say, look, this is not fair. Like if they've clearly favoured their sort of elite members, kind of thing. So it could be potentially set a quite a troubling precedent for the Premier League, and they'll be wanting to avoid it as much as possible.
Exactly. Well, Pete did give me a good lead in there when he talked about the Amigos earlier on. So obviously most of us came off the back of NUFC Matters, but one of the things that has been quite constant throughout the last year, certainly for us four guys and others that have been on NUFC Matters, is we made a really, really good friend over in Saudi Arabia. And he not only does he love to chat, but he has officially become an adopted Geordie. So he was on the Amigos earlier on talking about the links to Saudi, and I really enjoyed watching him. So I kind of pinged him straight afterwards and said, do you want to come back on for another half hour and chat with us? And fair play to him, he said yes. So welcome for the first time ever to Loaded Mag, our good friend Al Walid, from LW Newcastle, all the way from Riyadh in Saudi. Welcome, my friend.
He never rests.
How are the lads? I miss you really much. Match day live. So I become addicted to match day lives. I really miss you guys really much.
I know, yeah. I don't think your wife is missing us that much because you have free Sundays now. So
actually, we just have some argument.
Yeah, exactly. So
I was trying to find England shirt, but I didn't, unfortunately, for my show
we'll,
today. Yeah.
Yeah, if you can't get one, let us know. We'll sort you something out. Obviously, Al Walid has become a good friend of ours. Joined us on one of the live match days, and we've all been good friends since. So Al Walid, give us. Obviously, we were chatting about the Premier League. What were we expecting today? Obviously Ashley and the rest of them were in the south of France earlier in the week. But what's the current feel from your side in Saudi? Is there a lot of talk about the takeover? Is there more people starting to get a feel for Newcastle? Obviously you do your show on a Friday night, LW Newcastle, with L. And you're often on there, and you two boys with your Newcastle shirts on. So what's the current feel in Saudi for the whole takeover? Where do you think things are at?
All right. Now, Saudi fans are really confused. Same as Newcastle fans. Confused. They didn't know exactly what's going on. There is like type of fans. Some fans like me, very close, aware of everything. But this is not usually the majority. If we talk about the majority Saudi fans, the majority, they just follow the trusted sites, just say, okay, what's going on? They are not too much into the court and the stuff and the cases. They just want we call it sometimes in Arabic, the better. It's the conclusion. We call it the better in our language. What is the conclusion? So people confused, but for me, I see there is 3 points, which make me, maybe I look calm, but actually I'm boiling inside. Now the separation, everything regarding separation is out there. Everything regarding piracy and stuff is out there. So now the transparency, we are waiting for the transparency, and it was good tactics that Mike Ashley take Keith Patterson case, adapted and make it in public. Now we see the court, which should become public, and we know what's going on, and this is a pressure message to stop the delay from Premier League. Now, as we hear today from Keith, the Premier League trying to make it private. So they are, usually who is want things private? Usually the one who have something to hide. Premier League, they just happy to be in dark always. They think that they should. It's like mafia, like mob mafia. They just do their business. It was quite right to call them as dark forces. They just like to do their business in the dark. And actually, they are not respecting. They are not respecting anyone at all. If they ask for a private, this court should be public. Okay, we know the arbitration, it should be regarding the rules, but regarding the rules, this court for anti-competition should be in public. We should know everything. As we see Che Honora and the parliament members, they are talking about transparency. We deserve, after the hard work we did for us, it was waiting more than 1 year. It was very difficult. Too many lives. It's long, very long time, and we're wasting more than 1 year of our life, and following something should be very easy. Should be a positive thing, not just it's like regarding investment, regarding to great relation between Saudi Arabia and United Kingdom, and shouldn't be only owning football club to become this. This news coming out and this word's being spilled, it's making us very angry, really.
Okay. Now, obviously, over the last while we've all been together, we've been doing the Matchday Lives and NUFC Matters and all the other shows we've been doing. There's obviously been a huge thawing of diplomatic relations between Saudi and Qatar. We've seen both kind of heads of states visiting the countries. There seems to be a lot of diplomacy work going on in the background. And obviously with some of the news released earlier this week, and Chris, maybe you can lead on this one. obviously the Premier League announced their watch list of those countries allegedly involved in piracy and everything else. And strangely enough, Saudi Arabia have been left off the Premier League's list this year. So, Chris, why, is that a positive for us from a takeover point of view? Is that something that you could see coming, or, should we read anything into it as Newcastle fans, or was it par for the course with a bit of the thawing out, and, are things happening in the background that are lining up the dots, as Liam Kennedy would say, or was it just something that was going to happen?
I would say it's a positive. I mean, I wouldn't read too much into it. It's more of an incremental than a major step. I mean, there are still other countries like the U.S. and other countries that have Saudi Arabia on the watch list, there's a difference between the Premier League putting them on the watch list and the UK or the US. It's more thought of, does a country have them on the list or not? It's a positive. I mean, you have to say that the pirated channel is shut down. And depending on who you talk to, things may not be fully back up and running in terms of like the license for BN in Saudi. But as Ali could tell you, you can watch through the old way they used to be able to watch is available to watch, and it's not a pirated channel. So there is a legal way to watch, even though some people will say there's still not a legal way to watch. You have to say anything that's bringing down the tensions, like I talked about before, in different contexts, has to be a positive. But I wouldn't say that any one thing or sort of any one indicator is not going to be the whole deal that unlocks this whole thing. It's all part of
the dots joining.
Yeah, it's untying a bunch of knots, and that's just one of the knots that's been untied.
Okay. Now, obviously, one of listening to the amigos earlier on, Keith made a really funny comment, which was obviously we have a certain couple of journalists who seem to, whenever there appears to be a bit of a positive around the takeover, they seem to hop on. And obviously one of those is Ben Jacobs and Al Walid. For those people that don't follow Al Walid, get onto Twitter, follow him at LW Newcastle. He is a funny guy. And when Ben Jacobs had a bit of chat a while back there over earlier in the year about not being able to be available in Saudi, Al Walid popped up within about 25 minutes with a brand new beIN box. And when he opened it on the video, there was a picture of Ben Jacobs in it, which was probably, to be fair, one of the funniest things I've seen, along with his comment this week, which was, what does Ben Jacobs and a Christmas tree have in common, which is that they know nothing. So one of the questions I wanted to put to everybody is, obviously, Ben has been on a lot of shows. He's been on NUFC Matters with Steve in the last few days. He was on Gallagher Shots with Chris Wallace the other night. He hasn't been on Loaded Mag yet because he doesn't even know who we are, but we will ask him at some point. Might help us with the subs. But just, Nate, starting with you, what do you make of Ben? Do you think, there's lots of talk from what I've seen on Twitter and other things. Obviously, he works for certain papers, he works for certain regions and stuff. But is he a genuine guy that gives both sides? Is he anti-takeover? And I'm not looking to get into huge depth. It's just, is it a case of, a bit like a Luke Edwards? As soon as we see a positive and a bit of a glimmer, is he there to pour a bit of scorn and quieten it down? Do you think he's given fair to both sides, or do you think, as a lot of NUFC fans seem to do, which I'm not saying that giving him criticism and personal comments on Twitter is the right way to go. I think it's all about having a fair and balanced discussion. But do you think he gets a bit of an unfair crack, or do you think he brings it on himself?
Personally, I've very much enjoyed his appearances on Steve Rafe show. I haven't watched the Gallagher show, so I'm not sure of the context and the sort of mood and feeling around that show and how that went. But from when he's been on Steve Rafe's show, just those two together, I've quite enjoyed the discussion and the debate. I think you're not really going to find any journalist that's not kind of partisan in any particular way towards whether that's a company or a state. And obviously, when we're talking about being, we are sort of largely talking about the state, aren't we? Because of the sort of entrenched sort of divisions that have gone on between Qatar and Saudi. But for me, I think I've particularly enjoyed when he's been on. I think he's been quite fair and sort of leveled in a lot of the things that he said. I don't think he's been overly positive, but I don't think he's been overly negative. But what I did feel that when he was on with Keith, he was put under a scrutiny that perhaps he hadn't been put under before when he'd spoken to Steve, because Steve had asked him all the questions that the viewers had. But you know, I think anyone here that watched it, you know, Keith went for him, didn't he? In the nicest way possible. Keith grilled him, and Keith had all his facts there. He had all his documents, and he's well up on all his evidence, and he's got, you know, he doesn't do this for no reason, does he? He's well versed in everything that he's talking about. So he went for Ben in the nicest way possible and tried to pull him up on a lot of things. So when you see somebody backed into a corner in that sense, it's difficult for them to kind of not show like they have any allegiances when he's been asked very difficult questions. When he's being asked sort of more surface level questions, let's say, it's more easy for him to give an air of impartiality. But when he's being asked, you know, where did you get that letter from? Who showed you that letter from? It has to be someone from the Premier League. He can't sit there and do anything other than look.
Divulge that. Yeah, exactly.
He can't sit there and look anything other than like he's on one particular side, which he is, but he's not been put under that scrutiny before, and I think that was quite telling. What I do think is quite disappointing is the sort of levels of abuse that he's been getting on Twitter. It's all one for having a good debate and stuff, and I think the Keith debate went on. It took over the whole show, didn't it? Pretty much, and they had some good back and forths, but the Newcastle fan base at times is militant in terms of jumping on something and jumping on a cause. If they don't like something, they'll jump on it and they'll do it to death, won't they? So I was very disappointed to see a lot of that on Twitter, because I felt there was some level of rapport being built up from initially everyone's views on Ben Jacobs. There was a level of rapport built up over the two shows that he did with Steve before he did the Keith show, and there was quite a lot of mutual respect there. There was a good bit of banter about Leicester and one thing and another, but yeah, I think when you press someone like that, it's difficult for them to sort of remain impartial. But yeah, I think it was a lot of the stuff I've seen on Twitter has been in a bit poor taste. They should keep to like what Owl Lead did. That was hilarious.
Yeah, comedy genius. Owl Lead. Obviously, you've watched most of the shows. I'm presuming you watched the one with Ben on last week. Do you think he gets it in the neck from Newcastle fans? You know, does he? You know, do you think he does fair representation? What's your view on Ben?
Okay, that's
we know you keep pictures of him in your house, so
yeah, I think the picture's still in the box.
Yeah.
Ben Jacob, actually, that incident, it was coincidence. I bought the new box and I see his tweet. It was a coincidence. I make up this very coincidence. Nothing personal against him, but for me, I look, he's good in what he do regarding journalism and stuff, but obviously he's leaning to anti-takeover. He's obvious on BN agenda, maybe. He knows everything about BN, and when he said the source is Premier League, I don't know, maybe it's not the Premier League source, because I think it's BN, because he should know about Saudi taking from the list, and it was in January. He should know that, and apparently, obviously, he doesn't know. So why the source in Premier League didn't tell him that the Premier League take the Saudi from the list? So he should know that if the Premier League is the source. So I believe BN is only his source. If you notice his account, he's mostly take any focus on Newcastle and anti-takeover. He really wants this takeover not to happen very much. Okay, he's trying the things make the fans confused. That he doing two things. He tried to be honest, but also he lie, and he did some lies with other stuff. So this combination, so it's a mix between truth and lie. So truth and lie, if they come together, it's a lie. You can say it's a lie more than it's truth. So the truth, it should be only truth, no lies inside. So this is what I think from Ben Jacob, and I think I'm just waiting the takeover to happen. I have another video for him.
Okay, we'll wait and see. Pete, you know, I don't know whether you watched the Gallagher show. I watched both the shows, and I have to say, you know, they were. I thought they were both very fair in the way they were put forward. I thought Keith did put him under a bit of pressure, but I watched Gallagher shots, and I thought Chris Wallace asked him some very pertinent questions. I think, you know, what tends to happen again is, you know, the NUFC fan base. Also, not only is it split, you know, regards what's going to happen to Takeover, but you still have this unfortunate click between, you know, people that like a certain podcast and those that don't. And I think that doesn't help us as a fractured fan base either. When you have all of that, but you know, I mean, I know you've watched the shows. Do you think Ben puts himself, you know, quite quickly? Do you think Ben puts himself across well? Do you think there is an agenda there, or do you think he's getting a hard time off us black and white fans?
I think he comes across well. He obviously talks very well, and he likes to talk a lot about the issues that he's asked, and that's absolutely fair enough. And I did watch the Gallagher Shots podcast, and he talked very well. It was mostly sort of fan led, so the people that were tuning in were the ones that were really asking the questions, and Chris sort of facilitated that. But with Ben Jacobs, for me, it's very very clear, and I do read and look at a lot of what he puts out there, purely because I'm not a Newcastle fan that just looks at all the positives. I also look at the other side of the story too, because I want to get a fuller picture of what's going on. I'm not in the know. I don't know people within either side of the deal. I'm not in that way. I'm not that way inclined. So I have to look at all the sides to be able to get an idea and a viewpoint of where I think it's at. So I do look at his stuff. The only problem is that with Ben Jacobs, he's very top heavy with the BN and Premier League information, and it's very clear that that's the only avenue that he's getting his sources from. So therefore, he is going all out on that one side of the story, because that's all he's getting. You know, you've got someone like Liam Kennedy, for example, that's actually getting a view from both sides of the deal. So he's able to give more of a balanced view. You know, you see the same with Luke Edwards. Luke Edwards is only getting one side of the deal. So therefore he's going really top heavy for it. The only additional issue I have with someone like Luke Edwards is the fact that he antagonizes and winds up the fans on purpose for his own pleasure. That's why I don't particularly like what he does. But with Ben Jacobs, I think that's just the way it is. Now, he talks well. I think, you know what? Actually, for a guy that was willing to put himself out there and come on a podcast like NUFC Matters, which was seen as the enemy, so to speak, and to come on there and sit with Steve and talk openly, knowing that there were going to be viewers on there that didn't like him, didn't like his views. I thought that was, fair play to him, because he didn't have to do it, and then he went on again. But I think it was the fact that he was called out on a lot of the stuff that he's been spouting over the months by Keith, and a lot of the things that he'd been said, and I think he found it very difficult to answer some of those questions. And then obviously it spiraled out of control on there. So look, I don't think he's a bad guy, but I just think he's just being given all of his information down one side, and so to stay relevant, which is ultimately what he's trying to do in something that's so big right now, he's going full throttle with the information that he's being given. It's informative to some parts of the fan base, but for others, it's just BN spouted nonsense, and I think that's just the way in which it is right now.
Yeah. Okay.
I think the media as well. Like the media is all clicks and views and hype and that kind of thing. So the takeover has been a really sort of free ride, hasn't it, for a lot of people to get those, like, to get that traffic generated to wherever it may be, whether it's to their own persona or whether it's to a particular news source. So you look at, like, Ben Jacobs been doing it, but same for Richard Keys and these kind of people. It's and the people who've been talking shit on BBC. You look at Robbie Savage and Chris Sutton. It's like it's free clicks, isn't it, at this point?
Yeah.
If you look at,
Let me get my view in here.
Yeah. Go on, Chris, very quickly. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Yeah. So yeah, I've throughout the takeover process, I've defended journalism as a profession, and all these people that say, like, oh, if you have a confidential source, that means you made it up, and all these things. So just speaking generally as a journalist, people do deal with confidential sources, and to have a long wind up and then ask Ben, well, who's your source? It wasn't the most productive way. Certainly Ben is very polished, and as Pete said, he represents, his sources are in the Premier League and a BN. So he knows where his bread is buttered. So he's going to give you the view of his sources, which are predominantly on one side. I don't think that he serves himself very well when he. I'm certainly somebody that does long answers, but his answers for a couple of questions, he sort of does 2 or 3 times as long as sort of in a podcast or like a live sort of format that you'd want to do. And so he certainly knows how to sort of extend and sort of maybe overdo his case a bit. I would say that however way the takeover goes, he's going to say, I was one of your go-to people, and I kept you informed along the way. But certainly he likes the attention. He likes the banter between to sort of be like on the enemy list or whatever. And he certainly is not going to like back down from a challenge, and sort of likes to get his name out there. And so I sort of feel that that he sort of blurs, and it's sort of a modern thing, but he kind of blurs the lines between a working journalist, somebody that does kind of PR, kind of marketing, and he's marketing himself first. I mean, he's Ben Jacobs. He's the person that people a lightning rod. So I just sort of feel that he kind of he's definitely speaks well and is very polished. But I do feel that he's exposed for sort of being more than a journalist, and I'm not saying he's paid. I'm not going to say like who I think he's paid by or whatever, or I don't think he's paid by the Premier League or something like that. But very very clearly his sources are of one interest, and that is to represent the Premier League view. He can say that he's not anti-takeover, and he will always skillfully sprinkle in saying like, I'm not against PIF. I've interviewed Yasser Al-Rumayyan, the chair of PIF, many times, and so he will show you how he's got sources at PIF on, say, like he's talked to both sides. But for whatever reason, I don't think he's got an agenda, but it's in his best business interest. His calculation is that he's going to make the Premier League sort of anti-takeover case while maintaining, I'm a journalist, I'm impartial. He personally probably doesn't care either way whether Newcastle gets taken over by the Saudis, but professionally it seems like his sources, where his bread is buttered is against it.
Okay, cool. All right, just before we move on then, I will talk about a couple of bits. So first thing, obviously, is those who are watching, and we've got a few on there tonight. We've had a good few comments. Obviously, get onto the channel, hit like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Me and all the boys that do this do appreciate it. Even the likes of Chris, Nath, and Al Walid, who is sitting there in Saudi, do appreciate people who watch. But get on there and like and subscribe. Coming up then from us guys on Loaded HQ during the week. On Wednesday, we have got obviously Loaded Football. back again on Wednesday, and our special guest, although I do love the picture that Daz has put together, a cartoon version. I've lost half my head. Not sure what's happened with Chris. Pete looks pretty much the same. And Richie looks like, what's that painting that's out there? The Scream, I think it is. So I'm not 100%. I'm not 100% sure what happened with that. But our special musical guests are Tom Lumley and the Brave Liaison. And if you haven't listened to them, join us on Wednesday night and have a listen to that. On Friday, obviously, as part of the Euros, and we will kind of float around later on Twitter if anybody wants to come on. We are doing England versus Scotland, a live watch along. So if you want to join the likes of myself, Pete, Daz, and a few of the boys, we've got a few spots. So if you want to come on and do a match day live with us on Loaded Football and Loaded Mag, we're going to do that on Friday night for the England-Scotland game. Should be a good one. And then I suppose the next one really is... what we do have is we do have a little bit of breaking news. And we are very happy to say, obviously, tonight we've had our good friend Al Waleed on. And after many, many weeks of pestering, following and other things, Loaded Mag are very, very happy to announce on Monday night, 8:30, we have Liam Kennedy of the Shields Gazette will be joining Loaded Mag for a one-off special to talk about all things Newcastle, Takeover, and all other things. So we are absolutely delighted to have got Keith to get Liam to agree. And that's obviously for us at Loaded Mag is a real coup. So I know he pops on with Steve every Tuesday. But for a podcast only really starting out, without that fan base, we're absolutely delighted to have him on. So we're looking forward to that. So join us on Monday night, 8:30 for us guys and Liam Kennedy. We are really, really looking forward to it. And then last but not least, I will give a shout out to our sponsor for Loaded Mag, Centre Ale. Bruce and the guys over in Centre Ale, right in the heart of Central Station in Newcastle upon Tyne, doing a whole heap of fine ales, IPAs, spirits and other good stuff. Get in and see him. They're open there now, obviously with COVID situations relaxing. Go in, see Bruce, tell him the boys at Loaded Mag and Martin sent you in, and he will hook you up with some real good beer, especially over the likes of the Euros and stuff. So go on in there and see him. So yeah, that's pretty much all that's coming along. Pretty busy week for us lads. And again, obviously having Liam on Monday is one. I think I'm not sure who's more excited, me or Pete. The boys were on the show on Wednesday night, and I had that confirmed from Liam, and I tweeted them. I literally sent them a message mid-show and went, "Lads, will you plug that in because I've got Liam on Monday?" And Daz was like freaking out. So yeah, looking forward to that. We've got about 10 minutes left, and I'm conscious that it's probably Al Waleed's bedtime. So very quickly, we will move away from takeover chat, and I suppose looking at the team and transfer window is open, and obviously the first one I suppose that we've had a bit of wind on is Lee Ryder floating around the other day. Andy Carroll possibly offered another 1-year contract. I know Chris Hall for one would be delighted if that was to happen. No, Julie, I didn't say he'd pay for the drinks in Centre Ale, but there you go. Yeah, definitely not. And Bruce would kill me if he thought otherwise. But you can go in and get a good deal. But yeah, I mean, Pete, we'll start with you because if Chris was here, it would just be a love-in. So, I mean, what's the deal? Are we serious? Is this seriously going to happen? We're going to give him another 1 year?
To be honest, it's looking that way. I don't think a decision will be made until the end of this month. Do I think he should get a 1 year deal? No. There are players out there this summer, and we've talked about them over the last couple of weeks, that could come in and have more of an impact in this squad, right, than Andy Carroll. Look, he's a Geordie. He's an ex-Newcastle player before he came back. It's all well and good, but we need players that can perform on the pitch, or if there's injuries, players that can instantly come in and do a job. Now, you guys know as well as I do that during the back end of that season, when we had serious injuries to our front line, Andy Carroll could still not make the starting 11, to the point where he played 1 or 2 games without a striker and he was on the bench. Now, if that doesn't tell you that you have no future at this club, then I have no idea what will. So I hope that it's a case of the club of, sentimentally offered him a 1-year deal, but really he's thinking about going and plying his trade elsewhere. Because I think there's probably another couple of years left in him, but just not at Premier League level and certainly not at Newcastle.
Okay. Al-Walid, Andy Carroll, Chris Hall loves him. Should he get another deal as a player or player coach further on? Is it just, are we just taking a cheap backup option again because obviously Mike's not going to spend because the takeover? What do you think?
Andy Carroll, of course, he's a great player. And just the problem is the way Steve Bruce is playing is not helping. The style of play, only 3 or 2 people and 2 players in the front. This style not helping Andy Carroll. Or else he's a great player. I remember listening to Pete and some of other show. Actually, I forget which show, but Pete was saying that he have good opportunity to if he can teach the youth players for it's a good chance to teach them, especially usually now the big teams, they have like what Mourinho did with Drogba. He bring Drogba while he's 36 years old, just to teach the youth how to in some special training for strikers. So this is what we should do with Andy Carroll and his relation with the club. It's not about, I think, there is some players, they are, you can say, not only the contract is make them linked to each other. It's a long relationship between these two. So I'm happy for him to stay, but the problem is the style of Bruce. It's not helping. That's all.
Okay, Nath, Andy Carroll.
I think for me the big question will be why. Why do we want to sign him for another year? If you look at the past season, he played a handful of games, played a handful of times for us. As Al-Walid said, that system doesn't really suit him. So we've got playing with the sort of 3 up front, 1 through the middle, and the 2 wingers. Only Callum Wilson that's in our team can really pull that off. There's only him really with that natural ability and movement and knows what he's doing in terms of dragging defenders out of position. You look at when we've tried to slot anyone else in there, like Joe Linton and Gale, and even Carroll's played there at times. It just doesn't work for them because they don't have that natural instinct and ability to do it. They're different players entirely. So my question would be why? Why do we want to sign him? Because if you look at last season, we had Dwight Gale available. Steve Bruce has talked about how Gale was one of his favourite players and he's been dreaming of working with him and that kind of, always wanted to sign him, that kind of thing. He didn't play him. Andy Carroll was on the bench, and as Pete said, times where we played without a striker because he just didn't fancy him playing. So why would we want to have him for another? Is it just a case of having another body that we could pay less for? Is that all it is? That a body that's only going to pay them when we play? Is that how far we've sunk as a football team, that we've got to have people on a 0 hours contract to play for us? Is that where we're at? So for me, I think it's a non-starter, but I can see us doing it. It'd be the most Newcastle thing ever, wouldn't it? I speak to a friend of mine from Holland the other day, and he saw the news article about it, and he's like, Andy Carroll still plays for you. That's how anonymous he's been in the past, in the past year. But I know there's a lot of people talking about coaching roles. I noticed that in the chat as well. For me, we've talked about Joe Linton not being a forward, not being a striker, but if you look at all Joe Linton's physical attributes, he's that of a sort of target man, leading the line striker. So there's no reason why someone like Andy Carroll couldn't do a great job imparting that knowledge onto a player like Joe Linton and bringing him on to be a better sort of target man striker. But for me, I think we should have been doing that already, though. I should have been offering that advice. I don't know if that's happened, but we've not seen an improvement from Joe Linton, so obviously it hasn't. But yeah, for me, it's something that I don't mind us signing him if we're going to use him. If we're going to play a 4-4-2 and have him knock the ball down for people like Wilson, then great, because we saw him against Arsenal in the 2 when we played him back to back in the cup game. I think it was before we played them in the league. They couldn't handle him. They didn't know what to do with him. He was a nuisance from start to finish, and he was really, really useful that game. But if we're not going to play to his strengths and we're not going to play him at all, then why sign him again for me?
Yeah. Okay. Chris?
Yeah, I'm not in favor. I'm with Pete on this, and Nate. I don't think what's the point of having a striker on your club that you don't use? And I don't think that he doesn't have Premier League sort of stamina or prowess left in him. So, emotionally, you say yes. He's always a Geordie. He'll be part of the squad and in our memories. But I just don't think that he has enough left to be taking up a squad spot. Throughout the year, we talked about let's give a young striker a chance, and for whatever reason, Steve Bruce didn't give Elliot Anderson or sort of much of a run out. I would much rather see us develop our younger players and give them a chance on the first team, one player at least, rather than someone like Andy Carroll who's just not going to do it for the club. And so it's bittersweet because I do feel like he does have a connection to Newcastle and everything, and it's just under this team, this lineup, this manager, this coach, he's even if he did have something in him, it just doesn't. He's out of favor, and sort of this kind of seems to be kind of a mutual understanding. Like Andy Carroll doesn't really want to play for Steve Bruce, and Steve Bruce doesn't want to play Andy Carroll. And I'd rather have someone that's going to contribute on a weekly basis rather than taking up a squad spot, rather than someone who is just going to get scrapped 30 seconds at the end of one match and then not play for the next 5.
Okay, cool. My view is he probably should never have come back. We were obviously looking for the Andy Carroll of 2010, and all those seasons back. I know Steve Wright took a fair bit of jip for saying that a long, long time ago. But yeah, it was a marquee signing. Look, it wasn't. If we'd have got that Andy Carroll back, great. But we didn't. We got a different Andy Carroll. So I think it's time to move on to pastures new. It's coming towards the end. So what I want to do is just, obviously, we will call it an evening. I want to pay special tribute and thanks to the lads for coming on tonight at fairly short notice. Pete, as always, you will see with us next week. Chris A, thank you very much, comes on and gives us the legal beaver bit from whatever he read in the journal and that today, but always keeps us firmly feet on the ground. Nath, our Burnley buddy, who loves to come on and give us a bit of banter from his side. And, of course, my very, very special thanks to my best friend, Al Walid, all the way from Riyadh, from Starbucks in the back of his house. Thank you, my friend and brother, for coming on tonight. And we will see you again. As said, we've got a few bits coming up, and I do obviously want to just re-plug. So Friday, we've got England versus Scotland, Matchday Live. If you do want to come on, not just the panelists who are on tonight, but if you are watching and you fancy coming on and you follow us on Twitter, if you want to come on, drop either me or any of the lads, Chris, Pete, Daz, or anybody, a DM or a tweet, and we will send you a link for Friday night. Come on, watch the game with us, bring a drink, and let's have a bit of banter. But before that, obviously the big one on Monday night, join us for Liam Kennedy. Bit of a coup for the boys. We're looking forward to that. We've got a couple of little bits lined up for him as well to make it a bit of fun. So hopefully that goes well and we get him on again afterwards. And this isn't the only time. But we will, we'll see what happens. So on that note, I want to thank all of our guests tonight, Chris, Nate, Al-Walid, and Pete, as ever. From myself, Martin, follow us on Twitter. And if you're not following any of these guys that have been on the show tonight, get in touch. We'll give you their Twitter handles. Follow them because they do keep you up to date in the best ways, either positive or negative, with the NUFC Takeover and all other things, especially Loaded HQ1. So, drop a like, follow the channel, and we'll bring you some more of this next week. So, for me, it's good night. and the guys, and we will see you later. If I can find the video to play out, there it is. We'll see you later. Good night, guys.
Take care, guys.
Cheers, guys.
Yeah,
Bye.
bye bye.